The most intense U.S. tornado outbreak in recorded history would occur on April 3rd, 1974. The almost 150 twisters that struck that day would revolutionize the way severe weather warnings are communicated to this day. By the time all was said and done, the tornado outbreak would lead to 148 documented tornadoes, with the overwhelming majority having wind speeds of more than 113 miles per hour. That is over 100 tornadoes, the equivalent of an EF2 today. My name is Nick Eigelhart, and I'm your host for this week's episode of The Weather Vault. Overnight entering April 1st, a low-pressure system developed east of the Rockies and moved over the following 2 days into the Mississippi and Ohio valleys, where it would encounter the perfect three ingredients most needed for thunderstorm development: moisture provided by a low-level jet streaming from the Gulf of Mexico, instability created when the system's cold air met the warm, moist Gulf air, and lifting caused by a trough or dip in the jet stream. This tornado outbreak would occur in three main bands. Here you can see the geographic location and movement of the three bands. While the first and third bands did produce storms, the second band was significantly more intense. This second band, forming late morning in northeast Arkansas and southeast Missouri, would produce all of the F5 tornadoes and most of the F3 and F4 tornadoes that formed that day. Assisted by lots of moisture and daytime heating, it created violent twisters from Illinois and Indiana as far south as Alabama and Tennessee. One tornado would travel on the ground for over 120 miles. In the southern areas, conditions were right for what we call training, where storms repeatedly form over the same areas. This pattern would prove especially deadly that day. Unfortunately, in 1974, weather warnings were not distributed anywhere near as effectively as they are today. With the number of tornadoes during this outbreak, where at one point as many as 15 tornadoes were on the ground at the same time, there would be communication chaos. First, the technology was not good enough. National Weather Service warnings had to be manually punched into a paper tape and fed through a reader. With so many active tornadoes, some warnings took over an hour to transmit. Those warnings were also entirely reliant on visual confirmation, which is simply not always possible in fast-moving tornadic situations like in 1974. Secondly, the geography was uselessly vague. Warnings covered entire forecast zones of 10 to 15 counties. These zones didn't exactly overlap with TV station coverage areas either, which would create massive confusion on where exactly danger was. Stations often warned their entire viewing area for a tornado affecting just one corner or one county. Third, and perhaps the most absurd, weather warnings had the same priority as any other news. Tornado warnings sat behind entertainment and political stories, since everything printed sequentially. Overall, 335 people would die and more than 6,000 injuries would result from this outbreak, along with hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. This outbreak is described by the National Weather Service itself as a turning point in their history. It would be the catalyst to a major effort in the 1980s to address all of the issues identified from the 1974 outbreak and improve the ability of the NWS to issue timely forecasts and warnings to the public. A key priority was improving the geographic precision of warnings to reduce warning fatigue, which costs lives. In the 1980s, a digital header was developed known as Specific Area Message Encoding, or SAME. This message header lets warning systems automatically identify exactly which counties are threatened. Finally, entire regions wouldn't be warned for storms affecting just small areas. This is also when weather warnings began to be explicitly prioritized over all other forms of news, which fixed the problem of random news stories getting in the way of life-saving alerts during the 1974 outbreak. SAME remains the foundation of the geographic warning system today, but precision has continued to be improved. In 2007, the NWS adopted storm-based warnings, where alerts are issued as polygons covering only the storm and its expected track. Now, your phone only alerts you when a storm poses a threat to you, not when a storm is 20 miles away and moving in the opposite direction. Beyond just communication, there was also the need for earlier non-visual detection of tornadic rotation. The most important technology advancement would be the start of the Next Generation Radar, or NEXRAD, program. It would begin in 1976 as the Joint Doppler Operational Project due to the recognition that detecting tornadoes and other dangerous thunderstorms needed to improve. After more than a decade of development, the network would see its first use for day-to-day forecasting in 1992 with the installation in Sterling, Virginia. Today, the Sterling radar is the primary Doppler radar of the NWS Baltimore, Washington, D.C. forecast office. When you look at the radar, whether through a built-in iPhone app like Apple Weather or a professional tool like RadarScope, that data is being provided by the NEXRAD network, which are still the weather radars used today. Different apps may use different colors or different levels of smoothing for visual appearance, but they are all relying on the same core radar data. Ultimately, the long-term implications of the 1974 tornado outbreak and weather warnings would result in a massive improvement to the lead time, or advance warning, weather alerts provide. In the 1970s, lead time for tornadoes was only about 3 minutes. Now it can be as much as 12 minutes in advance. Those warnings can be broadcasted immediately and only to the affected areas, thanks in large part to the 1974 outbreak that forced a massive narrowing of broadcasts from entire regions, down to individual counties, and now to specific geographic polygons as of the 2007 upgrade. There is hope that currently experimental phased array radar that scans 2 to 3 times as fast as the current NEXRAD network will improve that lead time by 5 minutes. There are other experimental technologies in development that could represent a major step change in lead time, providing up to 70 minutes in the best case scenario. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to always be informed of my latest videos.